This is JadeCast, your gateway to traditional martial arts and Chinese culture. Brought to you by your host, Chef Jonathan Bluestein. Welcome back to JadeCast. Today's lecture concerns the question, where should I look when fighting? Now, this is a difficult one because the proper answer would be it depends. But some general good advice could be given. So, when you face an opponent and the both of you are standing, we have the following problem. If we look down, we're gonna miss the hands. If we look up, we're gonna miss the feet. So what do? The best advice that can be given is that if you are not already in physical contact with your opponent, if your limbs and bodies have yet to touch, then you would want to gaze roughly between their neck and their solar plexus. Right around there. It doesn't have to be a very specific area. And another thing that's very important is you should not focus your gaze on a specific area. Whether you look there, where I told you is best to look, or elsewhere, if you focus your gaze, you're going to miss something. So as long as you're not touching, you should have an open gaze, like looking at a broad view, like looking at a very large painting from afar, trying to capture all the details. Don't focus your eyes on anything and look somewhere between the neck and the solar plexus. Now, once you have touched limbs, what do you do then? Then again, the proper answer would be it depends, because certain techniques require different types of eye movement, head movement, etc. But generally speaking, most techniques that I can think of would require that your general view, head and eye movement should be roughly in the direction of the technique that you are going to perform. So you should usually look where you punch. You should typically look where you are going to apply the joint lock. But there are also exceptions. For instance, at times I might throw my opponent, and when I throw my opponent, I would actually often look either in the direction that he is thrown and actually might focus my eyes on the point on the floor to which I want the opponent to be thrown. So to make sure my power drives him in that direction exactly, or some scissoring-like type of maneuvers in throwing and tossing and takedowns often require that my head and my gaze would look at the exact opposite direction to that in which the opponent is going to be dropped in order to initiate the right type of muscle and tendon activation to make that technique work well. So like I said, it depends. But again, if we look at throwing techniques, like I said, many a time, it's very good to focus on the exact area on the ground where you want your opponent to get to. And actually, it's also a good idea oftentimes in many types of throwing techniques to not only focus your gaze in that direction and to that area on the ground, but also attempt to push your fingers or close fists or whichever limbs are driving the opponent to try to focus them so they would also point into that particular area on the ground. So that's one of those tricks you could use to really help support a throwing or a takedown technique if you want the opponent to get somewhere specific. For instance, in a self-defense situation, if you need their back or their head to hit the pavement exactly, you would want to have as many fingers as possible and as feasible in that sort of situation, even fingers within an enclosed fist, to sort of point in the direction of that pavement, and that would drive your entire skeleton, musculature, connective tissues to work your power into the opponent in a manner that would lead him to that particular point. It's a way of honing your intention to get someone to move where you want them to move. And the opposite is also true. Many a time, if you were to perform a technique, could be a ferrying technique or another technique, and you end up having too many fingers, either on the palms or the feet, pointing in the opposite direction to where you want your opponent to go, or not exactly where you want them to go, then you'd quickly find out the technique is not as effective or entirely ineffective because your body is not driving the force in the right direction. Now, typically, you would not want to look the opponent straight in the eyes unless you are a very seasoned fighter. And there are very good reasons for this. So, first of all, like I said earlier, if you look up, then you miss what's down. If you look the opponent in the eyes, you might miss his kicks or some lower arm movement. But more so, all cultures throughout the world recognize that the eyes are the gateway to one's soul. They are the gateway to the opponent's soul and also to your soul. And looking someone straight in the eyes can have a very significant psychological effect. Some people are very good at affecting others by looking them straight in the eyes. And you don't know whether your opponent might be more skilled at this than you are, even if you think you're pretty good. Because it's not something you could assess, like when you look at someone and examine their movements or their techniques. So, what do? We would like to project the correct intention through our eyes. So the opponent would look at our eyes and be affected, but we don't want to look at their eyes directly. Also, we want to keep our eyes and our face very relaxed, so to not project what we are going to do next. That being said and considered, there is one exception, which is deception. If you would like to fool your opponent well, then you should look them in the eyes, but not do so throughout the entire fight. Rather, you should just look them in the eyes momentarily and see if you can catch their gaze. If you cannot catch their gaze, if you look them in the eyes and they don't look back in your eyes, then it wouldn't be so easy to fool them. But if you caught their gaze, if you look them in the eyes and now they're looking at you and you initiated the first gaze, then you have the advantage for just a fraction of a second. Then it is possible to divert your gaze somewhere else and fool them to look in that direction. So for instance, you would look at the opponent, tease them to look back at you straight in your eyes, and then you look to the right while punching with the left hand at the same time. Now that takes a lot of skill because you have to keep your gaze looking in one direction while performing a technique coming from another direction and not signal with your eyes that something fishy is going on. The opponent, being that he's looking directly in your eyes, would be able to sense if you're fooling them, if your eyes are going to signal another movement going on with your body. So essentially you have to psychologically detach your eye movement from the rest of your bodily movement, and that's not easy to do. Some people are naturally good at it, but it's not as common. And if you'd like, you have to practice it. But I guarantee you that it works. It doesn't work with everybody, but I've used it many a time. A similar kind of trick would be with an arm movement or a palm movement. You can use the exact same principle. Instead of with the eyes, use your arm or your palm. The way you do that is you catch the opponent's gaze by moving the arm or the palm about and moving them slow enough So to allow and help the opponent catch a glimpse of them, catch his or her attention with your arm or palm movement. Wait until their eyes start following the arm or the palm, and then strike with another part of the body. That also works brilliantly if executed well. I hope you have enjoyed this lecture and made something out of it. If you like those lectures, please share them with friends, students, colleagues, teachers, whomever you see fit. And tap that subscribe button. There are many more lectures coming up and fantastic interviews on JadeCast, and you don't want to miss out. If you'd like more interesting information such as that I've shared with you in this lecture, you're most welcome to go on your favorite Amazon website and type in the search box either Research of Martial Arts. Research of Martial Arts is my first book, or you could look for another book of mine such as The Martial Arts Teacher, or just write my name down, Jonathan Bluestein, and you'd get to those books also. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch up with you next time.